y'all make a speech drop or do you want me to make it? Harker.
If you guys can do that and then just put the link in the chat, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I got it. We're good to start when y'all are.
We need like 2 minutes maybe.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, I will send the doc. Move over a little. Okay, doc is in. Just give me a thumbs up when you guys are good. Okay. Political research and theorization must first begin with the process of normativity. A, resolvability. Anything else forces the judge to arbitrarily decide between impacts based on their personal biases, inviting prejudice to intervention. Comparing framework solves by giving us an objective metric for evaluation. B, explanatory power. Moral frames are more persuasive and heighten moral conviction. Non-moral frames make us more extreme. Branch 2. Attitudes and moral conditions significantly more moralized. Non-moral frames increase uncertainty and extremity do not have a significant effect on importance and centrality. Non-moral frames reduce the strength of moral convictions. Moral convictions, a unique dimension of attitude strength. C, semantics, hand 12. Verbs like should or ought are associated with normative statement because they ask about obligations for agents. That inherently makes the resolution a question of normative ethics. Thus, the roles of the judge on the ballot are to determine the truth or falsity of the resolution. Prefer one jurisdiction. In PF, the judge is constitutively bound to truth testing. Hand in 12. A resolution declares something constitutive can be true or false, but before every act in the round ought to prompt the judge to determine the truth of the resolution. 2. Bindingness. Every argument asserts its own truth in the process of justification and must be rewritten as it is true that X. 3. Intrinsicness. 3. Dictionaries define affirm as to say something as true. That's Cambridge Dictionary, Oxford Learner's Dictionary, and Dictionary.com. dictionary.com, and 3 dictionaries to find negate as to deny the truth of. That's word sense, US legal, and the free dictionary. 4 isomorphism. True false is a binary decision calculus that coheres with a mandatory binary decision of voting app or neg. Ethical theories must begin with the process of normative epistemology. 1. Motivation. Our belief in a particular statement is determined by the strength of our epistemic reasons to believe it, since the epistemic soundness of arguments determines their truth values. Thus, only statements we have a strong epistemic basis for can motivate us to believe and follow through with them. 2. Justification. Every theory requires an understanding of how we acquire the knowledge that leads us to a belief that it is true. All justification for argument appeal to an epistemological principle in which we refer in order to proclaim that statement is true. All principles are subject to change based on experience of those principles. Conclusive judgments about principles cannot be made. West no date. Experience is a matter of doing and suffering. Trials and tests of ourselves, obstacles which confront us are similar to variation and progress, and only must be described as discovering. That demands constant interrogation and experimentation with moral principles is only a procedure that allows for constant testing and revision of ideas can allow for moral progress. Anderson 05. Value judgments are provisional with an eye toward revising them. If consequences are not found valuable, acting on value judgments applies data for confirming or disconfirming them. Change requires to revisit our original appraisals with an eye toward modifying them in light of new consequences. Thus, the standard for evaluating offense is consistency with the refinement methodological constraint on ethics. Prefer, if we experimented with an ethical theory and conceived of a conclusion we found repugnant, we revise and refine the theory until we came to a functional conclusion. Impact health. 1. Procedural violations of the framework come before substantive offense because it determines the subject's ability to approach ethics pragmatically in the first place. 2. Prospective consequentialism. A. Culpability to account for all impacts before action because agents will become morally culpable for all actions and states of affairs, not just those that factor into will. B. Normativity. X action is good if it has a 99% chance of being pleasurable, but if the 1% occurs, X action is bad. That contradiction proves the framework non-normative, since absent 100% certainty, we can never justify with something good versus bad in all instances. Z. Induction is circular to justify induction with previous examples, since it presupposes that induction is true. D. Humans suck at predictions. That's all 22. We're overly optimistic, thinking that we want to happen. That will actually happen when we get new information that fits into what we already believe is true. We're at a synthesis data. We at understanding statistical trend changes. Economists notoriously terrible at predicting recession. We rely on gut feelings to make decisions. We're at to know which factors are important. Now, the offense. Should and all claims are linguistically atemporal. Get for 20. In computing 68 plus 37, I follow directions I previously gave myself to determine that I should say 125. The meaning of an expression tells me what I have to do in order to conform to that meaning without any implication that justify I'm conforming to that idea. Might as well just be put atemporally determines what I have to do or write normativity. That's a double bind. Either A, the affirmative defends a universal that we should limit extraction, which extends atemporally into the future and thus procedurally violates the standard by preventing the possibility of experimenting, or B, they don't defend a universal law, in which case they cannot generate a normative rule. Underview. Framework responses must only be in second constructive. 1, else we're skewed to 9 to 5 responding in both ACs justify shiftiness where you dump into 2 AC2 framework arguments are proactive reasons to prefer one side of the resolution, which makes them constructive arguments. Reading framework and the rebuttal justifies reading an entirely new case and resetting the debate. 3, else we can't generate stable offense in the 2 and C because they could just void it with a 10-second framework response, which lacks fairness. Permissibility negates. To believe a proposition P is true, you need positive justification. Otherwise, you'd be forced to accept that P and not P are true, which is illogical.
Okay, cool. We'll send Doc. It's in the speech drop. Let me know if everybody's good. Okay. The order is a quick overview that you can just flow at the top of our case, which is going to be so it's going to be our case, an off, and then on theirs. Is anybody not ready? Okay. First, we get new answers in rebuttal. They will answer you till in the next speech, so it's illogical for us to defend it as well. We won't read a new framework and respond to the implications of theirs in the next speech, which solves so they can do the same. Advantage 1 is fish. Fish uniquely drives South China Sea disputes and their intensity, reducing extraction solved by inducing unnecessary cooperation that also disarms underlying tensions. Verse 16. The Hague ruled against China's SAS to exploit resources. China concedes 34% of fish growing demand as trip supply, necessitating fishing operations. Fishing is equally important as to others. The access is a matter of starvation. Fish are tangible objects in negotiation proposals to shelf. Disputes of procedural development of resources provide a basis if it is framed as necessary for continuing Chinese access. Fishing disputes cause conflict with the Philippines. Basilius 26. A fishing vessel was harassed by Chinese ships near the Scarborough shore, underscoring rising tensions by as Beijing asserts had tighter control. China's aggressive actions are designed to destroy the will of fish, while present 6% they are not threatening activities in 2026 would increase. Beijing expanded it, leading to confrontations. Manila ruled out support for fishermen to encourage their peasants. War draws in the U.S. Barner 25. The Philippines deep in cooperation with the U.S. and Japan and Australia. Washington repeatedly affirmed any attack would trigger mutual defense obligations. A single miscalculated maneuver would kill personnel, prompting the treaty. The imperative to demonstrate resolve we caution. Disputes carry new escalation risk. Goldstein 25. Dispute for the SCS escalated into nuclear war. Chinese warheads are capable of hitting American targets. Americans are talking about it, so we must bellicose signals from Washington make the newly fashionable case for nuclear war at Oregon. State U.S. leaders may need to substantially escalatory pressure. Nuclear tensions are rising. Hawkish rhetoric makes the situation worse. That's the most probable extinction path. Claire 23. A group power was using bioweapons and other nuclear extinction. The most worrisome possibilities of the U.S. and China. They spend the most are the militaries that have several characters who cause the war. The most important issue is Taiwan's location and industries are valuable for both conflict over ideals, for defending allies, territorial integrity, and passing justice. Nukes could lead to extinction through a framing conflict or reduce resilience enough that something else would. Next off. Truth testing is racist. The notion that debate should be centered around the truth and falsity of the resolution excludes discussions of interpersonal violence. Centering debate only on the topic makes punishing problematic practices impossible, since debaters auto-win when they debate a critique. That outweighs link charts on scope. Prefer 1. Discrimination paradox. To evaluate arguments requires a non-discriminatory judge. Otherwise, they arbitrarily hack against you based on your physical or mental traits. 2. Constitutiveness. And NSDA 23. Judge paradox. Judge should be based on arguments, not personal opinions. Ensure participants are treated equitably regardless of the background. 3. They agree. Pragmatism says discrimination is bad, but it's a question of theoretical versus substantive arguments. Every K impact is pre-fiat because racism is bad in here, but their arguments are about hypothetical morality claims out there on their case. First, on the random tricks, I'll answer them here. The tricks are wrong. First, the West evidence just says it's hard to discover what's true now, so we should stay alive to determine that. 2, the logic argument in the underview is incoherent because it just says we should have a warrant, and we do. 3, the uncertainty argument. Fiat solves since it assumes the act passes without any unintentional side effects. On their offense is wrong. We will agree that there is no universal good forever, but that does not mean we shouldn't take an action now. The Hanan evidence defines obligations and gives the following example. The resolution the government should cut taxes is a normative statement. It requires debaters to assess the value of tax cuts and determine whether cutting taxes would be the ideal action for the government to take. That means as long as we prove it's good now to solve extinction, vote F. Also, moral uncertainty answers this because if we are all dead, you cannot stay alive to deliberate future frameworks. On procedural offense, they say that procedural offense comes first, but that procedure only exists because there's something good or bad now, meaning substantive offense comes first. Then on the framework, the standard is preventing extinction. 1, moral uncertainty. The risk that we're right outweighs the risk that we're wrong. You need to keep humanity alive to continue deliberating about ethics to come to more accurate decisions. 2 is deontic. Their framework agrees violating human agency is bad, and death is the ultimate evil since it removes the ability for people to make decisions. Death also prevents deliberation, so it's the biggest impact. 3 is life. It's the only thing everybody agrees is good, since people who don't value life aren't alive anymore. This proves that preventing death is universally binding, and everyone else will agree it's good, which takes out their indites. On their calc indice specifically, first, they say predicting consequences failed, but 1 central limit theorem, the bell curve removes outliers, Birch-Brown 14. Statistical theory gives us optimism of predicting consequences. The central limit theorem is something is the result of a vast number of influences will tend to follow a bell curve that should map that consequences shared by influences do not mean that produces predictably unpredictable. A variety of influences will allow a pattern to emerge. 2, empirics, we can accurately make predictions. I can drop my phone now and I know it'll hit the floor. 3, tech over truth. Their arguments assume the consequences are hard to predict but not impossible. We've read a chain of evidence support by experts, so you should assume it's arbitrarily false. Anything else is judge intervention, especially when they haven't read defense. And on induction fails. Alternative induction is deduction or using reason. However, that's circular because they also use reason to justify why a reason is good. Only thing I cut is the last 2 analytics in the doc.
Like the responses to induction.
Yeah.
The second response to induction
And
the normativity stuff.
Okay, sure. All right, are you good for cross?
yeah.
Okay, I'll take the first question. Let's talk about the K. Why can't you read like topical versions of
Wait,
like,
because our argument is not necessarily about critiquing, like, let's say, the assumptions of the resolution, which is what you were saying is topical. Our arguments are about critiquing, let's say, if somebody in the round said the N-word and we wanted to have a critique of that.
wait, wouldn't you just take that to tab?
No, because we'd say that this is a very egregious example, but some examples are less egregious, which is why it's necessary.
Like what would be a
Additionally,
less
we'd say-
egregious what would be a less
Okay.
egregious example?
So one example we could give you is from the quarters of UKSO, where Cruz and Sean said that Avenues was being like very problematic because they read Baudrillard and then said that they don't defend that racism is bad, or that they think like something along those lines. Cruz and Sean took that to Tab, but Tab did absolutely nothing about it. We'd say technical litigation is best, and so debaters should be able to bring up critiques of interpersonal violence with.
Okay, so what if the judge is racist then?
We'd say that it's better to take the chance and have debaters be able to litigate it out, and we should not just as blanket assume that all judges are racist.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Let's talk about your argument. I guess let's talk about your offense. Can you explain? Oh no, let's actually talk about your underview. Can you explain to me how the math works out where you're skewed 9 to 5?
Yeah, so you have 4 minutes of second rebuttal, 3 minutes of summary, and 2 minutes of final. I only have 3 minutes of summary and 2 minutes of final.
Wait, but if why doesn't this apply to the way that debate normally works? Like when we have substantive rounds, like why does this not apply to the same thing, but teams that are first win all the time?
Uh, Wait, what? Our argument is about framework specifically because most substance rounds aren't framework debates.
Wait, but why doesn't like the warrants that you're saying, if they are true, should apply to substantive debates too, but they don't.
No, because those aren't framework debates. Our argument is about framework debate. I'll take a
Wait,
question.
but why is it specific? Can you
Right.
explain to me why it's specific to framework debates only?
Because framework debates justify what offense is valid. I'll take a question now.
What? Okay.
Let's talk about like your framework, or like whatever your framework is. Would it justify enslaving the entirety of the African race to prevent extinction?
No.
Why?
We would say that that's not something that we should have to answer because
Well,
that
I'm
would
I'm
not be
asking what it
true.
justifies. Like if
No,
if
because you have to provide me a reason why that statement would ever be true under UTIL for me to explain to you why UTIL
wait, why do I have to
wouldn't be
predict the
true.
future to ask what your framework justifies?
Because there is no world where enslaving all African Americans leads to preventing extinction.
All right, that's fine. Do you need prep? Yeah, we'll take a little bit. Starting now.
Talk for about a minute. And dog.
We're good, by the way.
Just all good.
Yeah, just what's the order gonna be?
Yeah, I got you. Order will be starting on pragmatism. Um, Answering the Chalcondytes. Going to our offense. Then I will go to the fish argument. Wait, no. Then I'll go to the K. Then then their framework, and then the fish argument. Does that make sense? I'll signpost. All right. Everyone good with the order. Starting on prag. Cool.
The only weighing between the frameworks is that they have to say that we have to stay alive to determine ethics. That's irrelevant because obviously there's a pre versus post fiat distinction, i.e., we all know that voting for AF or neg does not cause extinction. So while we're debating, we can definitely determine whether the resolution is ethical or not, which means that their arguments cannot prereq ours. Now they just say on the prefer warrant, they just say it needs a warrant and fiat solve certainty. No, our argument is that no framework is 100%, which is why testing is necessary, else there be infinite regress because we cannot generate like obligations, etc., without testing these arguments. This is that no framework is 100, which is why our framework resolved it. Now they say the central limits theorem resolved the induction stuff. Our argument or the resolves calculus induction definitely frames itself because just because the central limit theorem exists does not mean that just because things happen in the past does not mean that they'll happen again in the future, which means the central limit theorems exist. They say it only exists because there's something good or bad to prove. No, it's a question of how you have access to the procedure. They say that doesn't say that consequential is wrong and tech over truth, but our argument there's no bright line to analyzing any consequences, etc., because you cannot understand like when these consequences cascade, which means they cannot fundamentally generate obligations. They say we can make accurate predictions, that you can drop your phone, etc. We do not cite Tetlock. Our evidence says that foreign policymakers cannot make accurate predictions because there's always internal biases, which might, even if you have accurate models, people will contradict about this. They say empiric solve, which is odd just because we've used it in the past, does not mean we ought to do it in the future, and does not mean it ought to be good now on the offense. They say prove it's good, you can just vote app and there's moral uncertainty. They did not beat back our argument. Just asserting that uncertainty exists is not enough to beat back in them, and that the should claims are atemporal, so limitations are violations of our framework, i.e. stopping extraction is a violation of our framework because we cannot test extraction in the future, and they've dropped that should is atemporal. Now, their case. Okay? They say truth testing is racist. We have not advocated for truth. We have not advocated for truth testing, but rather said it's a constitutive feature of the activity. We can't do anything about it. They say centering debate about a topic, like punishing problematic practice, but topical version definitely solved. The judge could be racist, which turns your offense, and it forces debater to rejoin moral truisms and people's identity, which causes psychological trauma. Also, tab room just obviously can just resolve this. If you said the N word, then obviously the tab room would resolve it. Now I'll read a card. Accusations of racism causes people to double down. Brief conversations before or after run are scientifically proven to reduce racism. Lopez 18. Study looked at how simple conversations can combat anti-transgender attitudes in 10-minute non-vocational respondent work. Attitudes remain lower for 3 months. How can we reduce the type of prejudice? It's possible to reduce people's anxiety. Prejudice, if we just stop yelling racist, we find enough common ground for a real conversation about race. Few people read irredeemable millions to listen to what say calling a racist doesn't change people's mind. Terms like racist, white privilege, and implicit work seen as code serves people who pretend they change, and they don't listen to Americans become incredibly defensive and reinforce white supremacy. Now, their case, or now their framework. Look, the pre-fiat to post-fiat distinction definitely answers it, and they say the risk that we're right outweighs no. Your framework is non-motivational, i.e., or non-normative, because you obviously wouldn't enslave the entire African country to stop extinction, even if this is unlikely to happen. It still proves that your framework is non-normative, and they drop that your framework must be motivational and must be normative to order for you to garner offense. If you conclude that their framework is not normative, they cannot win. They say death is the ultimate evil. Obviously, like, I don't agree with this, but this disproves that death is the obvious evil. Bachari 11. Happiness unattainable. We all consumed by desires. Happiness consistent, full fulfillment. All happiness is negative, never positive. As soon as it's satisfied, ceases to be positive. Feeling absence of suffering, 1,000 pleasures. No compensate. One pain. Suppose that one weapon destroy human use of diminish suffering. Now go to Fish. Non-unique, Trump doesn't care about the Philippines. Roble 25. Manila has spent spent billions modernizing, but Philippines still leads to having in America. Their strategy largely based on the MTTs. Trump unpredictable. Raised concern about America's willingness to support Manila and past, Philippine clashes disprove U.S. draw in Canada 24. Philippine Coast Guard in the South Sea were done by Chinese Coast Guard. The vessel was intentionally hit multiple times earlier. Chinese water cannon against the Philippine vessel and have also blocked its supply mission. And Varner is terrible for them. It's from 4 months ago and it's talking about upcoming weeks, which disproves their argument. It's inserted for reference. Look, they cannot win the round because they have not proven that extinction first is motivational, which means it's not normative, which means that they cannot garner offense under the truth or falsity of the resolution to negate.
We'll run some prep starting now.
That's fine.
Okay, 51 seconds. There's a new card. I'll send it. Okay. The order is just the critique.
Did you send the card?
Yeah, I just sent the card. Oh, wait, there's one more. Where's this? Jones. Wait, ignore the old doc that I sent. There's a new doc.
Wait, he just deleted the old.
Yeah, I deleted the old doc as well.
Wait, did you send it?
It's okay. It's uploaded. It's framework and then the like K proper.
What framework first?
Yeah.
What framework first?
Yeah, framework first.
But what framework?
Like K framework.
Oh,
okay.
Wait, just
Everyone
give me a
good?
second to open the doc. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, everyone good. Cool. Our interpretation is that if we prove that the negative has advocated for something racist, they should lose the debate. They have dropped 3 justifications for this. First is a discrimination paradox. Racism must come first because in order to evaluate arguments in and of itself means that the judge has to be non-racist, i.e. i.e. the judge has to reject racism in every instance because in order to evaluate arguments requires that. Otherwise, they arbitrarily hack against you based on your physical or mental traits. 2 is constitutiveness. The NSDA evidence was dropped. You should reject racism in every instance because you should ensure all participants are treated equitably. That means that if we win a reason as to why they are racist, then they should lose the debate. Third, they agree. They've dropped that pragmatism also says that discrimination is bad, but it's a question of theoretical versus substantive arguments. Every K impact is pre-fiat because racism is bad in here, but their arguments about hypothetical morality claims come out there. Now, if they try to say fairness or clash or any of that, it's wrong. 1, on fairness, racism is the ultimate unfair skew since it makes engagement literally impossible and a logical prerequisite because the benefits of a fairer model are moot if no one can show up to it. You can also cross-apply the racism paradox here. On clash, it doesn't matter. 1, clash is undesirable in a racialized echo chamber since they produce advocates for the wrong side. 2 is accessibility outweighs the impact is faster material and ensures no one chooses to clash in the first place. Independently, they have also dropped that it is the only thing that your ballot can solve. Wins and losses shape debate, meaning that if you vote them down, they will stop being racist in the future. This is conceded, so obviously you vote negative, you vote affirmative because there's no reason as to why the negative team needs a ballot. Now, I'll answer all of their framework arguments here. The first argument they make is that double down is true, but the threat of doubling down alone is a racist voting issue. Blackmailing us by saying they'd be more racist if we tried beating them makes debate inaccessible. It scares teams away from calling out racism in fear of retribution. Independently choosing not to double down solves because nobody forced them to. Also, regardless of whether or not they double down, they've dropped that you should reject racism in every instance, which is sufficient to vote affirmative. Then they say that the judge could be racist, but the counter interpretation on judge choice will solve that later. It's also just as likely that tab room could be racist, meaning that it goes both ways. Then they say it forces you to negate your identity. This argument is incoherent. Just prove that you aren't racist and it's sufficient. Now, tab solves counter interpretation. Debaters may choose whether or not to end the round. It solves novices or people uncomfortable with technical litigation can end the round while people who want to debate can. Our model is better. 1 is autonomy, allowing debaters to choose the form is good. June 16. Marginalized can be met or reframe position by calling out target issues and mobilize outside of one mutational via competition instead seeking to interject or accuser for good contest speaking formally established voices authorized audience participating with approval of evaluation aligns when the accuser can always allow the person to say based on privacy bears different results. Audience is judge a valid function. 12 for empowerment. 2 is skills. Only our model generates the skills necessary to call out racism since time room and the judge don't exist in the real world. 3rd is double down. Will impact turn this. Debaters are forced to defend that their representations are good. Over time, they find the best warrants, which filters out false positives and ensures that debaters research representation of their arguments before reading them. Obviously, people will try to dispute the K on a link level. They won't impact turn racism, but our argument is that trying to dispute the K on a link level is good because it forces you to research your reps. 4, turn their model generates false negatives since judges perceive K is only a way to win. That's worse because refusing to punish an incident of racism is more severe than a false accusation since real harm happened. 5, this is incoherent. Our argument is about models. We weren't personally attacked, so ending the round here doesn't solve, but them losing is good because it solves future incident of racism. Now, the K proper, first on the truth testing link, their only answer is that they didn't justify it, but they obviously did. They said that PF is about proving obligations, and even if it's constitutive, they can still advocate against against it, proving by how they've dropped that truth testing is racist because it will prevent calling out incident of racism. For example, if debaters say slurs, we can obviously change the way how debate works, proven by how in the past teams like Wake, Emporia, etc. have changed the norms of debate and rules can be revised. Independently, they also link, we get new critiques because they drop units to trust in the last speech. Settler colonialism is founded on dialectical violence that is sustained through genocidal ratio that settlers force onto indigeneity to maintain their structural dominance. Their strategy of indigenous recognition precludes the struggle and conflict necessary to put the foundational break for settler colonial society. Cohort 14. Liberal recognition capable of curbing damages against institutions by the state, masters of dialectic progression, undermine colonial societies, no colonized society, no longer have to struggle for freedom, declared by the settler state political rights through struggle and conflict, subject to the of colonial process, shed colonial identities, recognition covered without struggle, self-determination cannot occur when fight does not put the foundational break with the structural colonial power. Best colonized can hope for his white liberty, recognition remain in the position of those in power. Hegel asserts dependency is crucial when applied to recognition. Mutual dependency rarely exists. Colonial master's difference in the colonies. Master wants not recognition but work. No mutual dependency. Master does not require recognition. I cut like the last line, but I assume you don't need a mark for that.
Yeah, we're good. Good for cross.
Yeah.
How do we link to set call?
Yeah, the cohort pragmatism links to set call. It says that we should all deliberate and come to a conclusion. Like, i.e., we should all get together, have a talk, and come to a conclusion. For example, if there's 70 white people and 30 indigenous people in a community, the indigenous people are always going to be bracketed out, and recognizing them as part, and also there's also a state link. The argument is that indigenous people are never wanted by the state, i.e., the state must erase indigenous people for them to exist.
Okay, even if all those are true, how have we justified this? Pragmatism says
you said pragmatism is true.
We can't violate other people's ability to access the frameworks. We can't violate people's agency. So why do we link?
Wait, what do you mean?
Because pragmatism means that everyone should be able to deliberate. So obviously,
yeah, but your argument is that the deliberations, that we should follow the outcomes of those deliberations.
Wait, what? Wait,
yeah,
no, wait.
Pragmatism. Either you're just reading pragmatism wrong, or actually, yeah, you're either just reading pragmatism wrong, or like you definitely link.
Because like what, having deliberations about
your argument is that deliberations and people getting together in a community and talking it out is good. Our argument is that this is racist because it excludes indigenous people.
Why can't they just join the community?
Because they always be outnumbered and bracketed out by the state. The state, one, never listens to them because they rely on erasing them in order to necessarily.
If you concede that it's the only, if you concede it's the only normative way that we can actually have ethics.
Well, our argument is that so are you saying that racism is not bad?
No, we are just making a claim that we are not.
Is racism bad? Wait,
racism is obviously bad.
Okay, so racism is bad means if we win that your framework is racist, then you vote negative. And it always under your framework because you just said that pragmatism justifies racism being bad.
Framework that says violating people's agency is bad. How is that racist unless you're trying to extrapolate and trivialize racism?
We're not extrapolating and trivializing racism. Our argument is that your framework is racist because your framework is
obviously
racist.
Our framework
that people should get together in a community and talk.
Go check this argument. Our framework is not racist because we says that we should deliberate and come to ethically good conclusions. Obviously, we would find things like
read the card. Indigenous people when applied to recognition, mutual dependency rarely exists. Colonial master differs in the colonies. Master wants not recognition but work. No mutual dependency. Master does not require recognition. Needs land, labor, and
this is all descriptive of settler colonialism. We agree that's a bad problem. But our framework does not
justifies that because it says
people can misinterpret the framework and do bad things. But the fact of like violating an indigenous person, like violating an indigenous person
for the way our framework is deployed in the real world.
No, because our argument is that
okay. So wait. You said we should not be held accountable to the way our framework is deployed in the real world. Really?
Because if we justify it as ethically good, then it is irrelevant if someone does the framework wrong because we're not morally responsible for how other agents work.
Wait, they're not doing the framework wrong because this is what your framework justifies. It says that
our framework does not justify excluding people's agency. All right. We have 2 minutes starting now.
The order is going to be starting on like the normativity overview at the top of our case, and then the K. Yeah. Is everyone good? Okay. Double drops political research and theorization must first begin with the process of normativity. There, K just asserts racism is bad without starting from some metaphysical explanation for what is good or bad. Obviously, I know racism is bad, but other people don't. The first standard to go for is racist judges. Without providing a way to evaluate what is good or bad, the judge has to arbitrarily decide between impacts and their personal biases. The judge could introduce their own racist biases to adjudicate between racism claims, meaning the judge might not vote down Racism Act, meaning if you are racist and then they rather want to see, and you have not explained what is good or bad. So the judge has to just decide them themselves and just vote down the K. That outweighs if the judge is racist and they vote you down after you've said something, or after you said that someone did something racist, that sends a message to the community that doing racist things is okay, which just recreates every single one of their impacts. The next standard to go for is explanatory power. The brand study is conceded and it is a study of real people and how they are perceptive to arguments. So we straight turn the K because we're reading it with a normative justification, meaning they will actually instantiate change in the real world based on your advocacies and internalize the decision as true and take real action in the real world. Because obviously we've justified from pragmatism that racism is bad. Now, extend that the role of the ballot to determine the truth or falsity of the resolution. It's not our argument. We don't want to do it, but it's just what the NSA rules say. Meaning is jurisdictionally in your burden to only vote on things that affirm or negate the resolution, which is what the K does. I'm sorry if it was racist. I didn't want to be racist. The NSA forced me to do this. They have no normative offense or permissibly negates. If you believe a proposition P is true, you need a positive justification. Otherwise, you'd be forced to believe accept that P and not P are true, which is illogical. Now I will answer the K. If you conclude that we are not racist, then do not vote for them. Gut check our 1 and C. Was anything that we did racist or different from any other LD or PF round? If you didn't think that we were racist before the 1 AC, then just drop them for trivializing racism in the first place. This is probably more racist. Also, they've just dropped the perp gun that their framework justifies enslaving the entirety of the African countries to stop extinction, which is definitely a more explicit link that always because on premeditated murder. Because if you're advocating for a movement and then people see you're violating your own movement, then people are less likely to follow on the truth testing link. We have not advocated for truth testing. We just said it rather as a constituent part of the activity. They say we can just fight back against it. No, we shouldn't break the rules. Our argument is that we should change stuff from the outside of the round. Our framing also thinks racism is bad. On the second link, they can experiment by themselves. Our argument was not about experimenting with ethics in communities, but just by yourself. Chronosex was very clear that we are not racist. Now I'll go for double down. Our argument is a models debate. We're calling out racism in round is bad because people choose to tactically beat back this argument in the future, and it also causes people to get more mad that they lost in the first place, which prevents actual introspection and changing your racist reps. We have read an empirical study prefer this over all of their high school analysis. They first response they say that we just choose not to double down, and then they also say that the threat of double down is racist. You just group both of them. Our argument is a models debate is not about in this round. The second thing that they say is we should reject racism in every instance. Double down is a turn to rejecting racism in every instance. They say it forces you to research our reps. No, our argument is that debaters will just come up with ways to beat racism accusations on the flow and just beat it on tech over truth.
Okay, we'll run prep starting now. Okay, that was 118. Does anybody remember how much we took for the last speech? The speech prior?
Maybe a minute.
Did you say something? Because I can't hear.
Wait, can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Like maybe a minute, I think.
Sure, we can go with that.
You have like
we have 42 seconds left.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. It'll just be like K framework, and then the K proper. Is anybody not ready? Cool. Remember the framing issue from Cross. They have specifically said that racism is unconditionally bad even under their own framework, which means that you should reject every instance of it. They have also dropped that our impact is pre-fiat because racism affects real people, but there's a hypothetical morality claim. They say that there could be racist judges, but the NSDA card literally says unconditionally reject racism, and they were racist, which means that they lose debate. Even obviously racism is bad, and it's in the rules for you to reject it. Second, explaining why racism is bad is not responsive to this argument. We agree with their framework. They said pragmatism says racism is bad. That means that under their framework, they are losing as long as we win the reason why they are racist, which I'm getting to now. Truth testing link. Truth testing is racist. The notion that debate should only be centered around the truth and falsity of the resolution excludes discussions of interpersonal violence. Centering debate only around the topic makes punishing problematic practices impossible since debaters auto-win when they debate a critique. That always link turns on scope. For example, this stops us from calling out people saying the N-word or less egregious versions of racism that we would not always have to be able to go to tab for. They say that we shouldn't break the rules, but obviously you should if it's racist. They also did not say anywhere or read any cards that they are actually required to do this, and that also numerous teams have broken the rules as per their arguments, reading things like chaos, and they have won, which means that they can just be one of them. They said that they don't defend truth testing, but obviously all the stuff I said above applies. They say that they can change outside, but this is incorrect because they've dropped the wins and losses shape debate, and that you can punish their act of racism in this debate, which will make them not do it anymore. Also, doing it outside of the round is bad. They have conceded that their model generates false negatives since there's a chance that people won't believe us. That's worse because refusing to punish an instance of racism is more severe than a false accusation since real harm happened and you did nothing to rectify it. On what they said is the perf con, this was not offensive rebuttal and it's not weighed in the last speech. Additionally, truth testing outweighs on scope because it justifies to every single person being racist in every single round and nobody was accountable. My answer was very specific and cross that this argument also would not happen in real life ever because it's never justified that it's just not ever going to be a world where you have to enslave the entire continent of Africa to prevent extinction. On double down. Beating it on the flow is our argument. Telling debaters to do this is good because it forces debaters to research reasons why they aren't racist, meaning that they have to do more research. Regardless, even if mindsets don't change, they've dropped the wins and losses shape debate, so debate becomes less racist. The way you break the clash is through empirics, things like your disclosure, the proliferation of Ks, etc. all prove that when teams win more by reading critiques, then other teams will read critiques, or at the very least do something to stop themselves from losing to those arguments, i.e. stop reading racist practices. That means that dropping them is independent ballot solvency because it means that in the future they will not read racist arguments like truth testing or follow racist norms, which we've already proven to you is something that is entirely possible to do because judges do it all the time. People always vote for this, and they have not given you any reason why we just have to follow the rules. It's just like they are asserting that you should follow the rules if it's racist, but there's no reason given. So we have told you reasons why you should drop them if they are racist because it causes psychic harm and is bad for debaters' health.
Good for Grant.
Yeah, I'll take a perspective. Explain to me for both the judges how we were racist in this round.
You advocated for truth testing and you said that truth testing is a model of debate that people should follow.
Because the NSDA told us we should follow it.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that because that's racist. So you should.
So we should. So to be clear, for both the judges, we should join an event, not follow any of the rules, and instead read stories about how we were how racism has affected us. That is your model.
No, our argument is that you should not follow rules when they are racist. I.e., if the NSDA rulebook or you join some event in which the rulebook said you must say the N-word, you wouldn't do that. You would break the rules.
But there's levels to this. There's levels to this. The NSDA said determine if the resolution is a true or false statement. Not only have everyone say the N-word.
Proven that they said that, but additionally,
the hand and fold evidence says that, which is read in constructive and extended in summary.
Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, under truth testing, how do you call out racism?
By taking it to tab, or by talking to them.
Taking it to tab is bad.
Or by taking it or by talking to them before round or after round, etc.
We've also proven why that's bad.
Why?
So what's the solution?
Also, just like topical versions.
Wait,
TVAs and TVS.
Topically say that someone's saying
check this argument. Obviously, it's like our evidence says that when people are called out for being racist, they just double down and believe that like being racist
even if
is
they
good.
believe, one, they don't believe that racism is good. They just
No,
believe
that's
that
what
they
our
are not
evidence
racist.
said. It
Yeah,
says
wait,
they
okay.
believe that they were right.
Okay, sure. They believe that they were right. We have impact on this and said that this is good because it forces debaters to research reasons why they're not actually racist and justify that. So through that process, they can learn more about what's actually bad and what's not. Second of all, you've also dropped that this is irrelevant because wins and losses shape debate, meaning that even if people don't personally become less racist, it still makes the community more accessible.
So to be clear, your model is to create people who read arguments, like whatever, lose on them, and then they become more racist, and that is good.
They don't become more racist because they have to research reasons as to why they were not racist. Obviously, if they don't find a reason as to why they're not racist.
Our empirical study says that when people are being accused of being racist, they double down and believe, oh yes, or like, oh no, your accusations are wrong and I wasn't being racist, etc.
But your study is not in the context of debate insofar as we have explained to you why in
Why
debate,
is it being in the context of debate wrong? Calling out racism should be the same like every single time.
Because in debate, you're going to have future rounds, and in those future rounds, if you debate the K again, you're going to not want to be racist, not want to link. That means that you're going to have research reasons.
If someone loses in the first place, they're going to just prep out responses to like microaggression.
And we said that's good. We said that's good.
No, your response is incoherent because you're saying they're going to research their reps. No, they're not going to research their reps. They're just going to write better blocks.
Yeah, the argument is that they're going to write better blocks to defend why they weren't racist. And that process is good because it allows debaters to learn about things.
What? So they can just be racist?
Yes, they can be better.
They cannot be better at winning. Racist, they lose.
Yeah, you can just prove that you're better at beating back racist allegations. That's what your model
because that would teach debaters the process of defending.
They just believe that they're.
No one is finding a card that says like no one is finding a coherent card that says like racism is not bad. Like so, obviously there's some levels of truth to this, but regardless, it doesn't really matter. Okay,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, we don't have prep. Order is normativity, truth testing. Yeah, case or K. All right. Is everyone good? All right, cool. Political research and theorization must first begin with the process of normativity, which is a drop warrant. Their K just asserts that racism is bad without starting from a medical physical explanation for what is good or bad. The reason is very specific. There's things like racist judges who cannot evaluate, i.e. the resolvability warrant is just dropped. They cannot evaluate between the two things because they have racist bias. Only our standard or interpretation solved because they actually define what is good or bad, etc. Which means they can actually adjudicate this round, which means that their K is wrong. You should just drop the K. The second is the explanatory power. The brand said it's just dropped and said that real people perceive are more perceptive to arguments that are like that are justified normatively, i.e. explained why this thing is normatively bad, etc., which means that it's more explanatory, which straight turns the cave, because if you read it with a normative justification, etc., then you're more likely to like understand it, adopt it, etc. Now the role of the ballot is dropped. The role of the ballot to determine the truth or falsity of the resolution. They dropped that it's constitutive to PF. The Hannon 12 evidence indicates that only in PF you can determine the truth or falsity of the resolution. They have not read normative often, so permissibility is neg. They've dropped that to believe a proposition P is true, you need a positive justification. Otherwise, you'd be forced to just accept that P and not P are true, which is illogical. Permissibility negates is just dropped. They don't have normative offense. The role of ballot is to determine the truth or falsity of resolution. Negate. Third case. I do not want to hear an RFD that I conclude that Lincoln Sudbury was racist, so I dropped them. Obviously not. They're trivializing racism. If people actually experience racism, they'll get mad at Leon and Alice for just like saying, oh, they're being so racist, because obviously we were not being racist, so I do not want to hear an RFD that we were racist, etc. We've also just said that this is the way that debate functions. We're not going to go in and break the rules of an activity that people have fun, etc., which means that we are not obviously racist. They also created a framework that justified the same thing, i.e. enslaving the entire African country to stop extinction, which is explicitly more racist, etc. Even if it means that they also link to just vote on permissibility. Now the truth testing stuff, I'll make it very clear for you. They say break the class on empirics. You cannot verify the disclosure was solved, but you can verify our evidence is an empirical study that says that when people were called out for being racist, they just double down and learn how to beat back responses, learn how to be more racist, learn how to respond to new things. So you're creating people who know how to beat back racist allegations so they can just be more racist in the future, which is a straight term to their method.
We have 42 seconds starting now.
The order is going to be like framework and then decay. So like framework will just be like reasons why you should reject racism. Everyone good? Okay, cool. I know this debate may seem messy, but it was uncontested through every speech that racism is the judge, that something should something that the judge should automatically reject, which is in the NSDA rules. That means that all we have to win is that they were racist and that we were not. First, on double down, even if they win double down, our argument is that you should still reject racism because it is your obligation to do so in the NSDA rules, which you cannot violate. Second of all, they have also dropped that wins and losses shape debate, i.e. when they lose to the critique, they will, i.e. when they lose to the critique, they will not read it in the future anymore because they know that they will continue losing rounds. They've dropped that this is empirically proven by things like disclosure theory, the proliferation of K debate, etc. And you know that norming is true because obviously the argument and the argumentative meta changes over time. But regardless, they've also dropped the impact turn to double down that says that it is a good thing, i.e. when debaters research their representations and research reasons as to why they aren't racist, they can justify that better. And they have said that justifying things is good. So we are winning under their framework. Okay, the K. Truth testing is racist. The notion that debate should only be centered around the truth or falsity of the resolution excludes discussions of interpersonal violence. Centering debate only around the topic makes punishing problematic practice impossible since debaters auto win when they debate a K, which outweighs link turns on scope. The first argument they make is that their framework justifies why racism is good or bad. We agree. They have also agreed with us. Their framework says racism is bad, and they were racist, so they should lose. We did read it with a normative framework because we said under their normative framework, they should lose. Then they say that trivialization is true. This is so incoherent. Like truth testing is genuinely racist. If people said a slur in round, their model means you can't punish it. They said that we can't break the rules, but you should because racism outweighs. And obviously bad rules are bad, which is something that they have not responded to in every speech. And the fact that you advocated for a bad rule means that they should lose. The final argument they make is that we link to the util K. One, they have dropped that their instance of racism is worse because they've justified every single racist practice. Two, they've also conceded our specific answer that util does not justify this because it would never be something that happens, i.e. when would you ever have to enslave all Africans to solve extinction? This is not something that would actually happen. So utilitarianism would say that it is not justified. Good debate.
Good
round.
Friends, see you all at awards.